All right, thanks for watching this video. I had no idea if people were actually going to watch this, but I want to make sure that you get solutions to the questions that I gave you. So, first question about the Church of the Bacon Eaters. 500% growth seems like it's a huge number, but really that could just be going from 1 to 5 people. You just get your friends to join you, and boom, there's 500% growth. Right? It's misleading, but it can still be true. It just seems like it's a bigger deal than it might actually be. Second question about the Bayer aspirin works 4 times stronger. This is an example of what's called a detached statistic. So it's detached from any further claim. There's Bayer aspirin works 4 times stronger than what? It might be true, but we just don't know what it's being compared to. If you watch commercials, they usually make these types of claims, and then there's in little tiny font at the very bottom what it's actually being compared to. But these are often misleading because you don't know what Bayer aspirin is 4 times stronger than. A previous version of itself, the best brand, the worst brand on the market, what is it compared to? This third one about Hobart and William Smith College with the SAT and ACTs. This can very well be true, but this is one of the issues when people do not fully respond to information. So this is almost what's called a non-response error, where only those students who got really good SAT and ACT scores will probably supply them to the college. If you did terrible on your SATs and ACTs and it's optional to report, you're going to choose to not respond to it. You're going to choose to not give that information up. And so this is an issue of making sure that we can understand if there's ever a change in how the data has been collected, of whether or not you have the option or you're required to submit something. There might be some differences that take place with that. The next question about the home security system of when you go on vacation, burglars go to work, according to FBI statistics. That one, this is obviously trying to portray this feeling of fear that, oh, there's an exorbitant number of burglaries that take place during the summer. Right, and they're trying to tie it into there being some sort of issue with people going on vacation, etc. But if you look at how much of the year takes place between Memorial Day and Labor Day, right? Memorial Day at the end of May to Labor Day at the start of September, there's about 3 months of the year. 3 months of the year accounts for roughly 25% of the year. So if all of the burglaries take place just spread evenly throughout the year, you would expect 25% of burglaries to take place during 25% of the year. And so this claim of 26% of home burglaries, it's almost meaningless. It's just, okay, cool, that doesn't tell me anything, but it seems to evoke a sense of fear that's not actually statistically correct there. So those are some of the biases of how they could be true, but maybe misleading is some of these claims. Hopefully that helps with that. Now, if we look at the next page of this, where we're looking at some potential errors and issues that arise, we look at this first one about the groups of 20 mice. If you think about a group of 20 mice and some number have success with cancer treatments. If it's 0 out of 20, that's 0%. 1 out of 20 is 5%, 2 out of 20 is 10%, and then 15%, 20%, etc. So all of the percents have to either end in a 0 or in a 5%. You can't have 48%. That doesn't make sense as a percent out of 20 mice. And so there's clearly some sort of error that they made, some sort of typo or some issue that we're not completely understanding. So these percents don't make sense when you look at some number out of 20. You look at this claim about the California fields and melons per acre. When you think about an acre being 43,560 square feet, if you calculate how many melons take place per square foot, I think it's, what does it come out to, 13-ish or something? It doesn't make sense. How can you have 13 melons grow in 1 square foot of property of this field? Now, even if you think about multiple iterations of melons growing for maybe one season and then harvesting, getting a new crop of melons, etc., that number still doesn't quite make sense. It doesn't make sense. How could there be 13 melons that grow in 1 square foot region of a field? And so again, this should lead us to asking more questions. But initially, you might not have thought anything of it. Of 750,000 melons per acre, cool. You don't think about it until you realize what that's implying about how many melons there are per square foot. The next one has a similar vein about this New York Times article about drivers. 1 million drivers on the road. They cover 2.8 billion miles in driving. Sometimes really big numbers we don't really think that clearly about. If you calculate what does this imply, 2.8 billion miles per person. If there's 100 million drivers, if you divide the 2.8 billion by 100 million, you realize that this is saying the average driver drives 28 miles per year. That's closer than us to Hutchinson. And so there's drivers who drive tons and tons and tons. And yes, while there's some drivers who maybe don't drive any, we're expecting that maybe there's some sort of error. That why does the average person drive 28 miles per year? That seems like a much smaller number than we would anticipate. So we need to look a little bit closer to understand, is there something that we're missing, or indeed, was this some sort of mistake? Should this have been 28 billion or some other number that maybe would make more sense? And so now if we get to this last page of some of these questions, so this question about the immigration, this was a fascinating group of studies that I had read about a couple years ago when the conversation of immigration was a really hot topic. And so different surveys had very different results about what the American population thought about this question. And so should there be a wall between the border of U.S. and Mexico? Should a combination of natural man-made barriers, etc., be between U.S. and Mexico? Should there be a wall between the U.S. and Mexico, or should we have essentially open borders? One major thing that we have to realize is that words are very powerful. Words can evoke something that other words might not. And so if you think about the word wall is such a hot, politicized word, and it wasn't that way 20 years ago. But if you think about the word wall now and after Trump's presidency, the word wall has so much more of a weight to it. So some people are immediately opposed to a wall just when they hear the word wall, and some people are like, absolutely, I'm all for a wall when you just hear the word wall. So this first question about should there be a wall between there, the second question, the combination of natural and man-made barriers, that's exactly what the wall was defined as. When you look to see what is a wall, it's defined as this, but you're not using that very specific word that's going to evoke some emotion from you. And so when this was done by two different survey agencies, they got very different results, that a lot more people were very either for or very against a wall being built, but more people were in the middle of, I was kind of for, I'm kind of against this idea of combination of natural and man-made barriers. So you get a lot more extreme opinions with this first question than the second one, even though they're asking the same thing. And then this last one, should there be a wall between the U.S. and Mexico, or should we have essentially open borders that allow anybody to pass through? You're creating this false dichotomy, and you're trying to probe some emotions from people while reading through the questions, and everyone's like, no, I don't want essentially open borders. Like that doesn't seem okay, but then you only give them the other choice of a wall. And so you don't want to create this false dichotomy when there's not one, that you don't want to try to evoke emotions. Your questions and surveys should be very even keeled. Don't try to rile people up or try to convince them and bring up some emotions that they shouldn't be thinking about. That leads us to the second question, the second one on this, about these college students. Right, when you read this first question, when you consider the amount of money, when you think about the amount of money you'll have in the future with a college degree, how expensive do you think college is? Well, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll make a lot of money with a college degree. College isn't that expensive when I think about how much I'd make. But then when you consider how much you'll be paying off in college debt for how many years, how expensive you think college is, again, you're evoking this emotion. You're like, ooh, debt, I don't want to be in debt. Wow, college is really expensive, right? Again, it's not fair to ask this these lead-up questions. You don't want to be forcing people to respond in a certain way. And again, creating these emotions, you instead, a very fair question to ask the same thing is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how expensive do you think college is? Now, even if you look at that, some people argue that the word expensive is going to, again, evoke some sort of emotion, and you try to find a more neutral word to put in there. But either way, asking that question, that just a second part of the question of, on a scale of 1 to 5, how expensive do you think college is? That is absolutely more neutral than the two options that we have here. You're going to get very different results by these first two because you're manipulating people's emotions. And then now if we go down to this Coca-Cola one, why are these things misleading or misuse of statistics? So a recent study by Coca-Cola shows that fat consumption, not sugar, is leading cause of obesity in humans. One thing we have to be aware of with people who share data and information is if there's some sort of self-interest that might potentially lead to an incorrect use of statistics. And so in this thing, when we look at Coca-Cola is a company. If they're doing this study, chances are they hope that sugar is not going to be causing obesity. There's no fat in Coca-Cola, so for them, they want to publish these types of claims because it continues in their best interest that people keep drinking Coca-Cola because it's fat-free, there's just a lot of sugar. And so we don't really trust surveys or studies that are done by a company that has very high self-interest. We would trust something maybe done by a medical society or some sort of doctors or somebody, right? We would trust those results more than a study done by Coca-Cola because we think that they would probably be manipulating the statistics to get the type of claim that they want. And then this last one, studies suggest that smoking causes weight gain. That word suggest is absolutely meaningless. That word gets used a lot because there's no actual weight to that word. What does it mean to suggest? Does that mean that there's actually a relationship there, that there's actually a causation between smoking and weight gain? What's taking place? And so that word suggest can be used a lot when people want to make stronger claims than are actually statistically valuable. So we want to be very careful about those types of claims that use the word suggest or implies or some of these vague words that actually carry no weight. So if you made it to the end of this video, you should be rewarded with the opportunity of some extra credits. So for extra credit that's due by the exam next Thursday, what I want you to do is I want you to find at least one example of how these types of statistical claims, these errors, are being used around you to potentially manipulate you or just being ignorant of statistics. That's what these companies are using them for. So if you find some sort of advertisements, some sort of videos, some sort of websites that are posting articles, anything that is kind of in this vein that this activity covers, I want you to then upload it to this assignment on Canvas. I'll make sure that you have the ability to upload something. Depending on the number of people who do this, I will award extra credit based on that. And what I mean by that is the more people who do this, the less extra credit will be given. The fewer people who do this, the more extra credit that will be given, to basically make sure that if you watch this video, you're not telling all of your friends about this, to make sure that those people who didn't watch this video are then getting extra credit for something that they didn't do. So hopefully that motivates you to just kind of do this on your own. Try to maximize the amount of extra credit you get because fewer people will do this. But maybe all of you are watching this as a class and you're all just like, well, we all know, spoiler alert. So whatever, but that's why you're able to upload some sort of file or solution to this assignment on Canvas. So hopefully you know all of these things for the exam. And if you have any other questions, please let me know.